Take a look at this block of flats with the red railings. These were built by the Improved Industrial Dwellings Corporation in 1864, and they're some of the earliest social housing in London. At its height, this corporation housed 30,000 people, with 22 families in this building alone. So over the course of the 19th century, London's population increased 600%, becoming the largest city in the world by 1851. And London could not cope with all these people. There was nowhere for them to live. People ended up living in these slums called rookeries, where a big house would just be divided and divided and divided over and over again until a whole family was living in one room with maybe 5 or 6 adults to a bed. If you wanted water to wash yourself or your clothes, you had to go outside to a pump and then carry the water back up several stories by hand. You think the queue for the bathroom is bad at your house? A single toilet could be shared by a whole courtyard of families. One writer called James Greenwood said he found a room being shared by 5 people and a corpse of a woman who died in childbirth, and they hadn't been able to get a coffin or even a shroud for her. Of course, in these single rooms, there was nothing to cook with, so you would have to go out to eat for every meal. So in the second half of the 19th century, people start thinking about how to improve the living conditions of the working class, including building places like this. The roof was built flat so that the inhabitants could have somewhere to hang out their laundry without it being stolen. The flat roof was also seen as a good place for children to play because it was safer than playing on the street, which, I guess I can see their point, but that's not how we would do it these days. The owner of the building, Sidney Waterlow, said it represents an oasis of wholesomeness in some dirty desert of dingy and rickety buildings where toiling millions are presently worse housed than the rich man's horse. If you lived here, you'd have your own bathroom, luxury, and the rent would be discounted depending on your circumstances. However, this wasn't a charity, this wasn't public funding, this was a corporation, so they do want to make a profit. They had rich investors who wanted to be seen as doing philanthropy, without actually giving any money away. So the IIDC promised slow, steady returns on their investment. It was nicknamed 5% philanthropy. And you had to meet strict criteria to get one of these houses. You had to have a regular job and be what Victorians would call respectable, which often meant being married or at least having a job that was stable. So the people living here weren't the truly Dickensian poor like we might think of them. They were teachers and policemen, people who could do crafts for a living. The average income in this building was 28 shillings a week, as opposed to the average wage for a general labourer, which might be 20 shillings a week. And the corporation was quite open about doing this on purpose. They thought that poor people would come home drunk, smash the windows and not pay their rent. And they've got investors to please.